May 21, 2025. The Oval Office, usually a stage for diplomacy, became a battleground. President Trump met South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, but the meeting quickly turned volatile. Trump pressed Ramaphosa on the inflammatory claim of white genocide in South Africa. The accusation, baseless and divisive, dominated the room, overshadowing any hope for constructive dialogue. Ramaphosa, seeking to repair strained ties, was blindsided by the narrative he came to dispel. Adding intrigue, Elon Musk, South African-born tech mogul, sat silently, his presence fueling speculation. As Trump and Ramaphosa clashed, Musk's silence became as notable as the president's words. The world watched as a diplomatic firestorm threatened to unravel already fragile U.S.-South Africa relations. This was not diplomacy, it was a collision of narratives, with global consequences. The Oval Office had never felt so combustible. Ramaphosa arrived with a planned focus on trade unity and investment. Trump, however, fixated on the white genocide narrative, derailing the agenda. He presented dramatic visuals, crosses videos, claiming evidence of targeted killings. Ramaphosa countered with official statistics showing most murder victims in South Africa were black, not white. Elon Musk, often vocal on social issues, remained silent, his stance ambiguous. The meeting became a case study in how misinformation can hijack diplomacy. Substantive issues were lost amid sensational claims. The fallout threatened to further strain U.S.-South Africa ties. The world watched uncertain of what this confrontation would mean for the future. In the end, silence and spectacle overshadowed substance. U.S.-South Africa relations were already frayed before this meeting. Trump's administration had slashed aid and offered asylum to white Afrikaner farmers, stoking racial tensions. These moves were seen as punitive and divisive, deepening mistrust. South Africa's legal action against Israel at the International Court of Justice further widened the rift. The U.S. staunchly defended Israel, while South Africa stood firm on its position. Diplomatic daggers were drawn in public forums, not sheathed. The May 2025 meeting was just the latest flashpoint in a long brewing storm. Trust had eroded, and the relationship teetered on the edge. The Oval Office clash was a symptom of deeper, unresolved antagonism. The foundation of diplomacy was cracking under the weight of politics. Ramaphosa's mission was clear: reset relations and focus on trade. He brought symbolic gestures, including white South African golfers, to showcase unity. Billions in investments were at stake, and he hoped commerce could bridge divides. Yet, the task was monumental. Trump's unpredictability loomed large. Ramaphosa's team prepared for turbulence, clinging to pragmatism and hope. The goal shifted the conversation from politics to mutual economic benefit. Would visual diplomacy and calm negotiation make a difference? The odds were slim, but Ramaphosa persisted. The meeting was a last-ditch effort to salvage a partnership. The outcome would hinge on whether reason could overcome rhetoric. Trump's agenda was singular: push the white genocide claim, ignoring all else. Far-right narratives were elevated to presidential talking points. Ramaphosa's trade proposals and gestures of unity were sidelined. Trump's strategy, dominate the meeting, put Ramaphosa on the defensive. The Oval Office became his stage for a political spectacle. Facts and diplomacy were drowned out by sensationalism. The world watched as two leaders collided, each unmoved. The meeting was doomed to be a showdown, not a negotiation. Trump's unwavering focus left no room for compromise. The diplomatic script was rewritten in real time, by force. The meeting's tone shifted as Trump seized control. He dimmed the lights and played a video of white crosses, claiming evidence of genocide. His rhetoric was emotive, painting a picture of targeted slaughter. The video, later revealed as misleading, was central to his argument. Trump's conviction was absolute, demanding a response. The weight of his words, as U.S. president, was immense. Ramaphosa faced the challenge of dismantling fiction presented as fact. The Oval Office became a stage for misinformation. The world saw a leader using spectacle to shape reality. The diplomatic facade was shattered, truth and narrative collided. Ramaphosa responded with composure, not anger. He presented official crime statistics. Most murder victims in South Africa were black. Farm attacks, while tragic, did not support claims of genocide. Ramaphosa's data-driven rebuttal exposed the flaws in Trump's narrative. He steered the conversation back to facts, away from sensationalism. The contrast between drama and evidence was stark. Ramaphosa fought misinformation with calm, documented truth. The hope reason would prevail over rhetoric. The world watched, weighing spectacle against substance. In the end, facts stood firm, even as the narrative storm raged. News of the explosive Oval Office confrontation did not remain confined within its walls for long. Whispers turned into headlines. Details of President Trump's white genocide claims and President Ramaphosa's factual counter-arguments began to circulate globally. The international community watched with bated breath. Reactions started to pour in, particularly from South Africa itself. Officials and political figures from across the spectrum weighed in. The narrative presented by Trump was met with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and sharp condemnation from many within the nation he had accused. The diplomatic incident was rapidly escalating beyond the two leaders. Among the most vocal and unsparing critics was Julius Malema. The leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, a prominent opposition party in South Africa, Malema is renowned for his fiery rhetoric and outspoken nature. He is a figure who rarely shies away from controversy. His responses are often direct, cutting, and designed to provoke. True to form, Malema did not mince his words when addressing President Trump's sensational allegations. He met Trump's claims not with diplomatic nuance but with outright derision, reflecting a significant segment of South African public opinion on the matter. Malema's critique, as reported by CNN, was particularly scathing and personal. He publicly mocked President Trump's sources of information. He suggested that Trump was being gossiped to. He characterized those supposedly informing Trump as older men, implying they were out of touch or peddling baseless rumors. This dismissal was not just a political counterargument, it was a pointed insult. It aimed to ridicule the very foundation of Trump's claims. Malema's words painted a picture of a U.S. president swayed by unreliable hearsay rather than credible intelligence, a deeply embarrassing portrayal on the international stage. The sharp, dismissive tone from figures like Malema had a significant impact. It served to amplify the incredulity surrounding Trump's claims. It reinforced President Ramaphosa's more measured, fact-based rebuttal by adding a voice of passionate, popular indignation. Such strong condemnations from South African political leaders highlighted the profound disconnect between Trump's narrative and the reality on the ground. It demonstrated to the world that the accusations were not just being questioned, but actively ridiculed within South Africa itself. This further isolated Trump's assertions, framing them as a bizarre and unfounded diplomatic attack rather than a legitimate concern. Amidst this fiery exchange between two world leaders, another prominent figure sat in the Oval Office. Elon Musk, the globally recognized tech billionaire, was a somewhat enigmatic presence. Born in South Africa, his connection to the country added a unique layer to his attendance. He was not a diplomat nor strictly a political advisor. Yet there he was, a silent observer as accusations of white genocide in his birth nation were leveled by the U.S. president. His presence alone sparked curiosity and speculation. What was his role in this high-stakes diplomatic theater and what were his thoughts? As President Trump presented his dramatic video and President Ramaphosa countered with stark statistics, Musk reportedly remained silent. This quietude was striking. Musk, typically vocal and often controversial on his social media platform X, offered no interjection. He made no visible gesture of support or dissent for either side during the heated debate. He was a study in impassivity. This silence was a stark contrast to his usual public persona, where he readily shares opinions on a vast array of subjects including South African affairs. His stillness in the room became a focal point of its own. The situation was made even more complex by President Trump's reported attempts to involve Musk. According to sources, Trump tried to link Musk to the plight of Afrikaner refugees. This maneuver effectively dragged Musk, willingly or not, closer to the heart of the contentious issue. It put him in an incredibly awkward position. Any statement, or lack thereof, would be intensely scrutinized. His prior sharing of a misleading video related to South African farm attacks on X already lingered in the background, making his silence in this direct confrontation even more pronounced and open to interpretation. Musk's silence in that charged Oval Office environment became a palpable entity. Was it a calculated strategic move, an attempt to avoid alienating any party? Was he genuinely uncomfortable, caught between his South African heritage and his American business interests? Or was it, as some later speculated, part of a broader decision to reduce his political entanglements? These questions swirled. His non-reaction, in a room where tensions ran incredibly high, spoke volumes. It was a silent standoff that added yet another layer of intrigue to an already explosive diplomatic encounter, setting the stage for further analysis of his motives. Elon Musk, a name synonymous with disruptive innovation and outspoken pronouncements. His South African origins lent a unique, almost personal dimension to his presence. He sat within the hallowed, yet on this day, turbulent walls of the Oval Office. Not as a primary negotiator but as a profoundly intriguing observer. The air crackled with the diplomatic electricity between President Trump and President Ramaphosa. Accusations of white genocide, a deeply divisive and false narrative, were volleyed. Musk, a figure with deep personal ties to the very nation under discussion, listened. His attendance itself was a subject of much speculation and quiet commentary. What role did this titan of technology play in such a politically charged arena? President Trump, in a characteristic move, attempted to draw Musk into the fray. He reportedly linked the tech magnate to the contentious claims surrounding Afrikaner refugees. This maneuver placed Musk squarely in an incredibly awkward, almost untenable position. He was caught between the US president's provocative narrative and his South African heritage. His every reaction or lack thereof was under intense, unspoken scrutiny. The weight of expectation, the potential diplomatic landmines, were immense. A word, a nod, even a subtle shift in expression could be widely interpreted. Yet, through the escalating verbal volleys, Musk maintained a notable, almost stark silence. This quietude was particularly striking given Musk's usual public persona. His platform, X, often served as a direct conduit for his unfiltered thoughts. He frequently engaged in debates, shared controversial opinions, and commented on global affairs. South Africa, his country of birth, had certainly featured in his past online discourse. His followers and indeed the wider world had grown accustomed to his candid, often impulsive commentary. To see him so reserved, so utterly still in the face of such a dramatic confrontation, was unusual. It was a departure from the norm that immediately caught the attention of observers. The contrast between his typical volubility and his current reticence was palpable. The mystery of Musk's silence deepened with every passing moment of the confrontation. Was this a deliberate strategic choice? A calculated move in a high-stakes game? Or was it a sign of discomfort, a man caught unexpectedly in a diplomatic crossfire? Perhaps he was simply adhering to a predetermined role as a silent observer. The questions began to mount, even as the primary dispute raged between Trump and Ramaphosa. His stillness was not empty. It was filled with unspoken possibilities and interpretations. In a room charged with strong words and stronger emotions, his silence became a statement, a powerful, enigmatic counterpoint to the overt hostility dominating the Oval Office. The silence of Elon Musk was not simply a void, it invited intense speculation. Many observers immediately cast their minds back to his previous activities on X. He had, in the past, shared a misleading video concerning South African farm attacks. This very video, or one remarkably similar, was central to Trump's current claims. This prior action had already drawn considerable criticism and fueled debate at the time. Did that experience perhaps make him more cautious, more hesitant to engage directly now? Was he wary of further entangling himself in such a volatile and sensitive issue? His past social media footprint undoubtedly formed a crucial part of the context for his present silence. Further fueling the theories was Musk's own recent public declaration. Just a day before this Oval Office clash on May 20th, a significant announcement emerged. Musk had stated his intention to reduce his direct political involvement, as reported by the BBC. This was a notable shift for a figure often seen wading into political discussions. His silence in the meeting seemed to align perfectly with this freshly stated position. Could this be the first major public demonstration of his commitment to stepping back? A conscious effort to disentangle himself from the very kind of political firestorm now erupting. The timing of his announcement and his subsequent quietude appeared more than coincidental. Beyond his stated intentions, other pragmatic factors might have influenced his reticence. Tesla, his flagship electric vehicle company, had been navigating a period of significant struggles. Market challenges, production issues, and stock volatility were well-documented concerns. In such a climate, courting further controversy could be seen as an unnecessary risk. Was his silence a shrewd business decision, aimed at protecting his corporate interests? Avoiding alienating any political faction or consumer base could be a paramount concern. A high-profile diplomatic spat was hardly the ideal backdrop for a CEO seeking stability. The pressures of his vast business empire likely weighed heavily on his considerations. Ultimately, Musk's quietude in the Oval Office seemed a complex tapestry of motivations. It was likely not attributable to a single cause but a confluence of factors. His past experiences with similar controversial content likely played a role. His very recent public commitment to depoliticization offered a direct explanation, and the ongoing challenges faced by his key business ventures provided a strong, pragmatic incentive. He chose a path of non-engagement in a situation fraught with diplomatic peril. His silence, therefore, was not mere passivity, but potentially a carefully considered strategy, a deliberate retreat from the political battlefield, at least for this explosive encounter. Elon Musk's decision to remain silent throughout the heated exchange did not go unnoticed. In fact, his quietude became a significant subplot in the unfolding Oval Office drama. Media outlets and political analysts immediately began to dissect its potential meanings. Was it an implicit rebuke of President Trump's unfounded white genocide claims? Or was it perhaps a sign of quiet sympathy constrained by circumstance? Some interpreted it as a shrewd move to avoid alienating his diverse global audience. Others saw it as a reflection of his announced withdrawal from overt political commentary. His silence, paradoxically, generated a considerable amount of noise and discussion. The implications of his non-statement rippled outwards beyond the immediate meeting. For those critical of Trump's narrative, Musk's refusal to endorse it, even tacitly, was noted. It subtly undermined the universality Trump sought to project for his claims. Conversely, some supporters of Trump might have wished for a more vocal backing. His silence left a vacuum, allowing various factions to project their own interpretations onto him. This ambiguity could be seen as both a risk and a strategic advantage. It allowed him to remain somewhat detached from the direct fallout of the confrontation. Yet, it also fueled ongoing speculation about his true stance on the divisive issues raised. The impact on Musk's personal brand and his companies also became a point of conjecture. In an era where corporate leaders are increasingly expected to take public stances, silence can be risky. However, given the extreme nature of the claims, engaging could have been far more damaging. His decision to stay out of the direct line of fire might have been a calculated risk mitigation. It allowed Tesla and his other ventures to avoid being directly dragged into a diplomatic feud. The long-term effects on his image, particularly in South Africa, remain to be seen. Would his silence be viewed as prudent neutrality, or a missed opportunity to speak out? These questions would linger long after the dust from the Oval Office clash settled. Ultimately, Elon Musk's silence in that charged environment spoke volumes, as CBS News aptly noted. It was a powerful testament to the complexities and pressures faced by global figures, caught between his South African roots, his business imperatives, and the political theater. His decision highlighted the tightrope many influential individuals must walk. The choice between vocal engagement and strategic quietude is rarely straightforward. In this instance, Musk chose the latter, leaving the world to interpret the echoes. His unspoken words became as much a part of the narrative as the spoken accusations, a silent standoff that added yet another layer to a deeply contentious international incident. The Oval Office confrontation immediately sent tremors across the globe. International news outlets seized upon the sensational details. President Trump's white genocide accusations became instant, glaring headlines. President Ramaphosa's measured, factual rebuttal was also widely reported. Yet the sheer audacity of Trump's claims often overshadowed the quieter power of Ramaphosa's response in initial coverage. Diplomatic missions in Washington and Pretoria buzzed with urgent cables. Foreign ministries worldwide scrambled to understand the implications. Was this an isolated incident, a peculiar outburst, or did it signal a dangerous new phase in United States foreign policy under Trump? The world watched, deeply unsettled. The damage to the already fragile United States-South Africa bilateral relationship was immediate and undeniable. Ramaphosa, despite his public insistence that the meeting went very well and focused on trade, faced a harsh reality. The genocide claim had poisoned the well. Trust, a vital currency in diplomacy, had been severely eroded. Other African nations watched with dismay. The African Union, often striving for a unified voice on the global stage, saw a key member state publicly assailed with baseless charges. This incident risked creating a perception of the United States as an unreliable, even hostile partner towards African nations, potentially pushing them closer to other global powers. Global media outlets framed the incident through various lenses. Some focused on Trump's penchant for controversial, unsubstantiated statements. They highlighted it as another example of his disruptive approach to international relations. Others emphasized Ramaphosa's dignified handling of an incredibly difficult situation. Al Jazeera and similar networks pointed to the potential for Trump's misinformation to derail crucial trade negotiations. European allies, already wary of Trump's America First policies, saw this as further evidence of a disregard for diplomatic norms and factual accuracy. The story was not just about two leaders, it was about the fragility of truth in power. Beyond the immediate headlines, a deeper concern settled within the international community. If such unfounded claims could dominate a high-level meeting between two sovereign nations, what did this mean for global governance? International bodies like the United Nations, built on principles of cooperation and factual reporting, faced an implicit challenge. The incident underscored the vulnerability of diplomatic processes to misinformation. It raised uncomfortable questions about how to counter false narratives when they emanate from the highest levels of power. The fallout was not merely diplomatic, it struck at the very foundations of international discourse and trust. Domestically, within the United States, reactions to the Oval Office clash were predictably polarized. President Trump's base, already primed by his previous rhetoric on the issue, largely accepted his narrative at face value. Many conservative media outlets amplified his claims of endangered white farmers in South Africa. For them, Trump was bravely speaking an uncomfortable truth. They lauded his directness, contrasting it with what they perceived as the overly cautious diplomacy of previous administrations. This segment of the American public saw the confrontation as Trump standing up for persecuted minorities abroad, a narrative that resonated deeply with their worldview. Conversely, critics of President Trump, including many Democrats and moderate Republicans, were appalled. They decried the incident as a profound diplomatic blunder. They saw it as an embarrassment on the world stage. Numerous foreign policy experts and former diplomats publicly condemned Trump's actions. They highlighted the dangers of basing foreign policy on misinformation and inflammatory rhetoric. Editorials in major newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post lambasted the president. They accused him of damaging U.S. credibility and alienating a key African partner for domestic political posturing, a severe indictment of his leadership. The incident sparked renewed debate among U.S. lawmakers regarding America's role in the world. Democrats largely called for a more fact-based, respectful engagement with international partners. Some demanded apologies or clarifications from the White House. Certain Republican figures, while perhaps not openly criticizing Trump, maintained a conspicuous silence, distancing themselves from the controversy. The white genocide narrative itself became a more prominent, albeit highly contested, talking point in domestic political discourse. It further deepened the existing partisan divides on issues of race, immigration, and foreign intervention, echoing through town halls and cable news segments. Public opinion regarding South Africa, already complex, likely fractured further. For those who believed Trump's claims, South Africa was now viewed with increased suspicion, even hostility. For others, Ramaphosa's calm presentation of facts reinforced a more nuanced understanding. It highlighted South Africa as a nation grappling with complex post-apartheid challenges, not a perpetrator of genocide. There were calls from civil society organizations and human rights groups for the U.S. government to retract the false claims. They urged a return to diplomacy based on mutual respect and verified information, fearing long-term damage to international norms. Back in South Africa, news of President Trump's accusations ignited a firestorm of indignation. President Ramaphosa's assertion that the meeting had gone very well was quickly overshadowed by the dominant narrative of the white genocide claims. South African officials across various government departments swiftly and unequivocally condemned Trump's narrative. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation issued strong statements. They reasserted South Africa's commitment to non-racialism and human rights. They meticulously debunked the misinformation, emphasizing the nation's ongoing efforts to combat all forms of crime affecting all its citizens, regardless of race. The reaction from South African political parties was remarkably unified in its condemnation of Trump's assertions. While domestic political rivalries remained fierce, on this issue, there was broad consensus. Opposition parties, including the Democratic Alliance and even Julius Malema's economic freedom fighters, joined the ruling African National Congress. They strongly criticized Trump's interference and misinformation. This rare display of cross-party unity underscored the gravity with which the accusations were viewed. It was perceived not just as an attack on the government, but as an affront to the entire nation and its post-apartheid identity, a collective insult. Public sentiment in South Africa toward the United States and specifically towards the Trump administration soured considerably. Social media platforms buzzed with angry and bewildered commentary from ordinary South Africans. Many expressed deep disappointment and frustration. They felt their country was being unfairly maligned based on distortions and falsehoods. There was a sense of betrayal, particularly given the historical ties and shared, albeit complex, history between the two nations. The incident reinforced negative stereotypes some held about American foreign policy. It created a perception of arrogance and a dangerous ignorance of South African realities. This external attack, based on such divisive and false premises, paradoxically had a unifying effect within South Africa. It galvanized a sense of national pride and a collective determination to defend the country's image. President Ramaphosa, despite the difficult circumstances of the meeting, was largely seen by his populace as having handled himself with dignity and strength. His calm, fact-based rebuttal in the face of Trump's aggression earned him respect, even from some of his domestic critics. The incident served as a stark reminder to South Africans of the importance of controlling their own narrative on the international stage, pushing back against harmful stereotypes. The immediate tangible casualty of the Oval Office confrontation was the trade agenda President Ramaphosa had prioritized. While he publicly maintained an optimistic front, the acrimonious exchange over white genocide cast a long, dark shadow over any substantive economic discussions. Analysts, as cited by Al Jazeera, quickly warned that Trump's misinformation could severely harm ongoing and future trade negotiations. The atmosphere, once hopeful for fostering stronger economic ties, had become charged with mistrust and resentment. Specific deals and investment opportunities, crucial for South Africa's economy, were suddenly thrust into a precarious state of uncertainty. Beyond the immediate trade talks, the incident inflicted deeper, more lasting damage to the bedrock of trust between the two administrations. Diplomacy functions on a degree of mutual respect and belief in the good faith of negotiating partners. President Trump's willingness to deploy baseless, inflammatory accusations shattered this foundation. Rebuilding that trust would be a monumental task, likely extending beyond the tenures of the current leaders. Future engagements on any issue would now be approached with far greater caution and skepticism from the South African side. The reliability of the United States as a partner was now seriously in question, a significant diplomatic setback. The fallout risked spilling over into other vital areas of United States-South Africa cooperation. For years, the two nations had collaborated on critical issues. These included regional security initiatives, public health programs like PEPFAR, President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, and educational exchanges. Such collaborations depend on a stable and respectful diplomatic relationship. The Oval Office clash, by creating such deep offense and mistrust, threatened to undermine the spirit of cooperation. It risked politicizing even humanitarian and scientific partnerships. This could have far-reaching negative consequences for the people who benefited from these joint efforts across the continent. Looking ahead, the path to repairing United States-South Africa relations appeared fraught with difficulty. The incident served as a stark warning about the potent danger of misinformation in international politics. It demonstrated how quickly false narratives could escalate, jeopardizing decades of diplomatic work. Analysts emphasized the need for consistent, fact-based engagement from both sides. However, the specter of the white genocide claim would linger, a potent symbol of a diplomatic rupture. The world watched with trepidation. They wondered if these two nations could navigate back from this precipice, or if this marked a new, more hostile chapter in their long and complex history. The Oval Office clash between President Trump and President Ramaphosa was far more than a fleeting diplomatic spat. It etched deep, potentially lasting scars onto the fabric of United States-South Africa relations. The confrontation, fueled by baseless accusations of white genocide, did not merely strain ties, it threatened to fundamentally alter them. The question of permanent damage looms large, a somber shadow over future interactions. Trust, the bedrock of all meaningful diplomacy, suffered a grievous blow that day. Rebuilding such a foundational element requires immense effort, sincere gestures, and a sustained commitment to truth, commodities that seemed perilously scarce in that heated exchange. The road to genuine reconciliation appears long and arduous indeed. This explosive encounter served as a stark, chilling illustration of misinformation's potent role in contemporary international politics. It demonstrated with terrifying clarity how easily fabricated narratives can be weaponized. When such narratives are wielded from the highest echelons of global power, they can overshadow empirical evidence and derail substantive policy discussions. The incident underscored the vulnerability of even established diplomatic channels to distortions and outright falsehoods. The ease with which a carefully constructed agenda of trade and cooperation was sideswiped by sensational, unverified claims sent a worrying signal across the world. It highlighted a disturbing trend where factual discourse battles constantly against the allure of inflammatory rhetoric. The implications extend far beyond the bilateral relationship between Washington and Pretoria. This episode acts as a cautionary tale for the entire global community. It reveals how the deliberate injection of divisive, false narratives can destabilize international norms and undermine collective security efforts. If diplomatic engagements can be so readily derailed by such tactics, the architecture of global cooperation itself faces a significant threat. The integrity of international dialogue is compromised when fiction is presented as fact, and when leaders choose provocation over partnership. This single meeting therefore became a microcosm of a much larger, more insidious challenge confronting the world: the fight for truth in an age of pervasive disinformation. The world must now grapple with the precedent set. When such high-profile confrontations occur, based on demonstrably false premises, it erodes faith in diplomatic processes. It emboldens those who seek to sow discord, rather than foster understanding. The spectacle of a powerful nation leveraging unsubstantiated claims against another sovereign state sends a dangerous message. It suggests that truth can be a casualty of political expediency. The fallout from this Oval Office showdown, therefore, is not just about policy implications or trade deals. It is about the very nature of truth and trust in global affairs, a profound and deeply unsettling consideration for all nations. Looking ahead, the world must watch United States-South Africa relations with heightened vigilance. The immediate future will likely be characterized by cautious engagement, perhaps even a degree of mutual suspicion. Any attempts to reset the relationship will require tangible, confidence-building measures from both sides, but particularly from the United States administration that initiated the damaging claims. The focus will be on whether President Trump doubles down on his narrative or seeks a path towards retraction and repair. South Africa, under President Ramaphosa, will likely continue to emphasize fact-based diplomacy while navigating the complexities of this deeply strained partnership. Trade talks, if they resume, will be under intense scrutiny for any lingering impact. Elon Musk's conspicuous silence during the confrontation adds another layer to future observations. His decision to remain non-committal in such a charged moment, despite his South African heritage and past pronouncements, will continue to be analyzed. Will this mark a genuine, sustained retreat from political commentary, as he previously indicated, or was it a context-specific calculation? How figures of global influence, particularly those in the powerful tech sector, navigate the treacherous intersection of politics, misinformation, and international relations remains a critical question. Their actions or inactions can significantly shape public discourse and even influence diplomatic undercurrents, making their future conduct a key area to monitor. The enduring challenge, starkly highlighted by this incident, is the persistent threat of weaponized misinformation in international discourse. The world must develop more robust mechanisms to identify, expose, and counter such narratives before they can inflict significant diplomatic damage. This requires a multifaceted approach, involving governments, media organizations, academic institutions, and civil society. Greater emphasis on media literacy, stronger support for independent journalism, and a renewed commitment to fact-checking at all levels are crucial. International bodies may need to consider new protocols for addressing state-sponsored disinformation that targets other member nations, ensuring accountability and upholding the principles of truthful exchange. Ultimately, the Trump-Ramaphosa Oval Office clash serves as a profound and disturbing cautionary tale for 21st century diplomacy. It underscores the fragility of international relations in an era where truth itself is often contested. The episode vividly demonstrated how personal agendas and domestic political considerations can dangerously bleed into foreign policy, with potentially devastating consequences for global stability and cooperation. The world should watch for signs of learning from this diplomatic disaster. Will nations recommit to evidence-based dialogue and mutual respect? Or will the specter of misinformation continue to haunt the corridors of power, casting a long, uncertain shadow over our collective future?